Welcome back. Losing ground a bit rapidly now, so off about 60 points from the top of the day. We're talking about 10,570 on the Nifty versus today's high of 10,630. Some of the stocks which have lost ground in the last 1 hour, they include Tata Motors. It was a big winner so far this week, and Axis Bank, HDFC Limited. So that heavyweight is also exerting some sort of a pressure on the frontline index. But let's move on then to the pharmaceutical space and what's happening with respect to a vaccine for COVID-19. ICMR has fast-tracked clinical trials of an indigenous COVID-19 vaccine, which has been developed in partnership with Bharat Biotech. Archana joins in with the details of this development. Archana?
Well, yes, that's right. In a letter by ICMR, which is marked by the Director General, Balram Bhargav, they say that they are fast-tracking the development of this vaccine, which is being developed by Bharat Biotech in collaboration with ICMR. And they have finalized and outlined 12 medical institutions that will be partners for the clinical trials that would be conducted for this vaccine. And they've asked all the clinical trial sites and Bharat Biotech to fast-track all processes and enrollment of subjects for this vaccine trial as early as July 7th. So possibly from July 8th, we will have the first phase of the trials begin. And the letter also suggests that they are envisaging to launch the vaccine for public health use by August 15, because while after completing all clinical trials, although the final outcome depends on the cooperation of all clinical trial sites that are being approved. The letter says that the vaccine project is the topmost priority that is being monitored by the topmost levels in the government right now. While this sounds hopeful, it is public health experts have been saying and vaccine experts have been saying it's an extremely ambitious target of crunching 3 phase trials, phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials into just 5 weeks, maybe too ambitious to ask, because there are a lot of safety protocols and clinical trial protocols that have to be followed, especially on the safety side, because remember, a vaccine is administered to a healthy individual and not to someone who's infected or diseased. And hence the safety profile has to be extremely properly studied and carefully studied, both the short-term safety as well as the long-term safety of administering that vaccine. Besides, there are lengthy protocols of getting the ethics committee, signing up of volunteers, healthy volunteers, and going through the entire process of 3 phases. So seems like an extremely ambitious target to crunch. Even World Health Organization on its part has said that even in a pandemic situation, when the clinical trials are being abbreviated to get a vaccine early on, even then a minimum of 5 months, a duration of 5 months of trials is required for a vaccine. So a lot of details are still pending to be received from ICMR in terms of what are the protocols they're going to follow, how are they designing the trial, what is the kind of clinical trials they'll be doing, and we await that detail. In the absence of those details, it seems like an ambitious target. Back to you.
Thanks, Archana, for putting that into perspective. So 15th August, Independence Day. Is it going to be independence from COVID-19? But as she pointed out, it's fairly ambitious. We're talking about 5 months of clinical trials effectively crunched into a 5-week period. But the markets have gotten pretty excited, several times in the last 2 months on news flow that a vaccine is being developed, either in India or even globally. India's own ICMR, as she said, is looking to launch a locally made vaccine by August 15. That's caused some amount of excitement. But just to put the perspective on the various phases before a vaccine can be administered to a healthy person, Prashant joins us with all the timeline and what it entails to actually put a vaccine up on the ground. Prashant?
Let me just begin by putting the conclusion of what I'm about to present here right up front, which is that there is no silver bullet yet as far as COVID-19 is concerned. As of now, there is nothing. So that is what I want to begin by saying. Now, this excitement, and we've seen many times the markets actually jumping up and down mostly up, based on vaccine results being tested on a certain number of individuals from US, UK, Germany, and markets do react. And they say, well, okay, this is a potentially vaccine which perhaps can be working, and it's understandable because, this has halted lives around the world, and a vaccine will unlock the world once again, the economies once again. So markets naturally will take keen notice. The purpose of this is just to put this in context in terms of what does it take for a vaccine to actually get approved and be available very widely. So this is the 4 phases of human clinical trial that we are talking about. The ICMR vaccine that we're talking about is in the preclinical stage. So it's got to enter this process once. And once you enter phase 1, you got phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 as well. Phase 1 basically is testing on a very small number of individuals. This is not basically to test the efficacy of the drug. It is essentially, it's very initial studies to see if it is even viable to take it into the second phase. The second phase, the group becomes a little larger. Several hundred people with the disease are given the vaccine. This in some ways identifies efficacy or the effectiveness of the vaccine to a greater degree, and further also studies side effects, etc. But phase 3 really is the real deal. This is essentially given to several hundred or thousands of people, and a similar group is also given placebo, and then the results are compared. The bunch which is given the vaccine and the bunch which is actually given the placebo, to see what is the effectiveness, and this also in a much greater depth and detail compares the side effects, etc. Look at phase 4, right? I mean, this is the last one. The drugs that are approved are basically then sort of put out in the market. But again, patients which are given these drugs in phase 4 are studied for side effects, etc. Let me just go across to the next graphic plate, which talks about the market excitement. The 2 points which many have constantly made is this. Are markets underestimating the timeline itself, which I put out, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4? And second, the difficulty which is associated with making it available around the world, right? I mean, is it as easy? How long will that take? Those are 2 basic points. Bulk of the excitement, if I can move on, with regards to the vaccines, has been phase 1 related, right? There are 200 candidates, vaccine candidates, which are in development right now. The WHO has taken notice of 17 of these, which are in either phase 1 or phase 2 mostly. But when you see, these test results coming through, they are mostly from phase 1 or phase 2. And as I said, phase 3 is the most critical, right? Let me just now go across to tell you which are the leading candidates in terms of the vaccine trials which are taking place. And I'm just putting out 4 candidates which will give you the perspective. There is the AstraZeneca Oxford University one, which Anthony Fauci, the leading infectious disease specialist in the US, is also not betting on, but has spoken about in the past. This is in trial stage 2 and stage 3 of trials, human clinical trials. Country of origin is UK. Remember, these trials can happen simultaneously as well. That is a silver lining. So, this can be expedited. You don't have to finish phase 1, go to phase 2. It can be done simultaneously. The Moderna vaccine, which is in phase 2, US-based, Pfizer, this is basically what the markets reacted to earlier this week. It's in phase 1 and phase 2, Germany and China. And this is the Chinese vaccine, which is in phase 1 and phase 2. But this vaccine is already being administered by the Chinese government to its army. I mean, army personnel are being given the vaccine to see whether it is effective and whether there are side effects, etc. or not. So, I mean, it's a complicated process. It takes time, and there are various phases which need to one needs to get by. So while the market reaction and excitement is understandable, every now and then we get these spurts, one's got to remember that this process is something that one has to get by. Remember, many disease specialists do point out that a treatment may actually come earlier than the vaccine itself. A vaccine usually takes a little longer. Back to you.
Okay, Prashant, thank you very much for putting that into perspective. We'll slip into a very short break on that note. On the other side, we'll get you snippets of a very interesting conversation that we had with Big Bull Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. You want to stay tuned in for this one.